gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Robert Sports Show. I'm your host, Robert. Alright, NCAA College Football Week 10. A little later than I wanted to be getting this video up. There is actually a game on here that's on Wednesday night. Not 100% sure this video will be up before that game gets on. We'll see. Crazy week. You know how life happens. We go on. Alright, so last week, win-loss 17-14. Brings the season total to 168-63. Against the spread last week, 11-20. Season 104-134. Over/under 12-19 last week. For the season, 119-119. We had the first college football playoffs. Came out Tuesday evening. The top six right now: Alabama 8-0, Clemson 8-0, LSU 7-1, Notre Dame 8-0, Michigan 7-1, Georgia 7-1. Those could change next week. We have some very high-profile games. I think there's 6 games that I looked at that are that's really going to, if weird things happen, it could just blow up the fucking championship committee. So we have 34 games total this week. First game, we have the Temple Owls, 5-3, 4-0 in conference, versus the UCF Knights, who are 7-0. Alright, that's my question for the committee. The playoffs have been, the 4 spots in the playoff has been for the Power 5 conference teams. Okay, so UCF, out of the American, not a Power 5 conference. I get it, no problem. Notre Dame is not part of the Power 5 conference. How can an independent be playoff eligible when an American conference team who is 7-0 is not? Those are the rules, I guess, right? What is? So, UFC is favored by 10.5. I got the Knights winning, going to 8-0. Covering the 10.5. Under on the 60.5 on the points. Next, we have the Memphis Tigers, 4-4. Versus the East Carolina Pirates, 2-5. Tigers are favored by 13 over the Pirates. A Tiger eats a Pirate, right? Taking Memphis to win, cover the 13, and under on the 64. Next, we have the Navy Midshipmen at 2-6 versus the 7-1 Cincinnati Bearcats. Bearcats favored by 13. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 50. Next, we have the Tulane Greenway 3-5 versus the South Florida Bulls 7-1. South Florida is favored by 7.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 59. Next, we have the Houston Cougars at 7-1 versus the SMU Mustangs 3-5. Cougars are favored by 13.5. I got them winning, covering, taking under on the 72. Next, we have the Louisville Cardinals, 2-6 versus the 8-0 Clemson Tigers. Clemson is favored by 37.5. Tiger eats a Cardinal, right? I have the Tigers winning. I have the Louisville covering the 37.5, taking over on the 59. Next, we have the Florida State Seminoles, 4-4 versus the NC State Wolfpack, 5-2. Wolfpack favored by 7. I get them winning, covering, and over on the 54.5. Next, with the Duke Blue Devils at 5-3 versus the 5-3 Miami Hurricanes. Miami favored by 9.5. I got them winning. I got Duke covering the 9.5. I'm taking over on the 51. Next, we have the Nebraska Cornhuskers, 2-6 versus the 7-1 Ohio State Buckeyes. Buckeyes favored by 17.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 72.5. Is there issues at Ohio State? Is Urban Meyer out at the end of the year? Heard some things on ESPN radio about Urban Meyer and the AD there having some issues. Winning solves all. They lost to Purdue. Big Ten matchup. They go on to make the Final Four and they make the finals. Is that good enough? Do they have to win? Otherwise, is it mutual? Urban Meyer says, you don't want me back? Fuck you, I'm leaving. Then where does he go? Does he retire from coaching? Does he go to another prominent Big Ten school? Nebraska? Well, time will tell. Next, we have the bottom of the barrel for the Big Ten, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights at 1-7 versus the 5-3 Wisconsin Badgers. Badgers favored by 28, winning cover over on the 15.5. My first, I think, big matchup here in Week 10. We have the Penn State Nittany Lions 6-2 versus the 7-1 Michigan Wolverines. Penn State can play the spoiler here. I think Michigan, as good as they have been this year, with defensively only giving up 14 points a game, I think they have to. It's more of a must-win, I think, for them, because if Michigan loses this, I don't think they got even a shot at making the Final Four. If they want to sniff the playoffs, they got to win this. Winning this helps them in the Big Ten. They got to get to the Big Ten championship game. And we know what the committee has done. A one-loss, non-conference champion can get into the playoffs. A one-loss team who lost, their only loss was in the final, when the conference championship game, does not make the playoffs. A two-win champion doesn't make the playoffs, as Penn State a couple years ago. I am taking the Wolverines to win this. They're favored by 10.5. I think it'll be closer than that. I got Penn State covering the 10.5 and taking under on the 52.5. Another huge matchup this week. We have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 8-0. I think Notre Dame has to win out to even be snipped playoffs. I don't think a one-loss Notre Dame, because what's left on their schedule isn't any powerhouses. I don't think that one loss will be a good enough loss to make the playoffs. They're facing Northwestern Wildcats, who are 5-3. They are leading the Big Ten. What is it? West, East, whatever it is. West. So, yeah, with 3 losses, they may be the best of the Big Ten West, but they're not going to make playoffs. So they could play spoilers here too. They beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame might be out. I do have the Fighting Irish winning. They are favored by 9.5. I think it'll be closer than that. I think Northwestern will cover the 9.5 and pick an under on the 53.5. Next, we have the 7-1 Oklahoma Sooners taking on the 5-3 Texas Tech Red Raiders. Oklahoma favored by 13.5. Here again, I take the Sooners to win. Red Raiders cover the 13.5 and the under on the 77.5. Another huge matchup in the Big 12. We have the 6-1 West Virginia Mountaineers versus the 6-2 Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns could basically ruin the season for the West Virginia. Top 2 in the Big 12 go on to the Big 12 title game. Can the Big 12 get somebody in the Final Four? Oklahoma's got 1 loss. West Virginia's got 1 loss. Longhorns have 1 conference loss, but they have 2 losses on the regular season. I am picking Tom Herman and Texas Longhorns to beat West Virginia. They are favored by 2, and then winning covering over on the 58. That would knock out West Virginia even a sniff in the Final Four playoffs. Next, we have the FAU Florida Atlantic Owls 3-5 versus the Florida International Golden Panthers at 6-2. Panthers favored by 3. I got them winning covering and under on the 59. University of Texas San Antonio Road Raiders 3-5 versus the University of Alabama Birmingham Blazers 7-1. Blazers are favored by 22. I got the Roadrunners covering the 22. Blazers win under on the 43.5. And I only say under on that because the Blazers in 5 conference games, they've given up 7 points a game. So their defense is very stingy in conference. Next, we have the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs 6-2 versus the 5-3 Mississippi Bulldogs. Bulldog versus Bulldog. Which Bulldog is bigger? The SEC. Mississippi State wins, covers the 22.5 and over on the 46.5. Next, we have the Battle of the Armed Forces. We have the Air Force Falcons 3-5 versus the Army West Point Black Knights 6-2. Knights favored by 7. Win, cover, and over on the 44. Next, we have the BYU Cougars 4-4 versus the 6-2 Boise St Broncos. Boise State favored by 13. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 54.5. Next, we have the Ohio Bobcats 5-3 versus the Western Michigan Broncos 6-3. Ohio favored by 2.5. I'm giving the 2.5 to the Broncos. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 65. Next, this is the game that's on Wednesday night. The Ball State Cardinals 3-6 versus the Toledo Rockets 4-4. Toledo favored by 18.5. I got Ball State covering the 18.5 and Toledo winning under on the 64. Not sure if this video will be completely up before that game finishes or before it starts. We will hope and see. Next, we have the San Diego State Aztecs 6-2 versus the New Mexico Lobos 3-5. San Diego State is favored by 10.5. I do have the Lobos covering the 10.5. Aztecs winning and under in 48.5. Next, we have the Northern Illinois Huskies 5-3 versus the Akron Zips 4-3. Northern Illinois favored by 6. Got them winning, covering and over in the 37. Next, we have the Fresno State Bulldogs 7-1 versus University of Las Vegas UNLV Rebels 2-6. Fresno State favored by 25. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 58.5. Another game I think will be huge. It is definitely for the Pac-12. Washington State Cougars 7-1 hosting the California Golden Bears 5-3. Again, Pac-12. You got to have one loss in order to even snip the playoffs. With having the 2 and 3, 4 right now in the top 6 SEC, even though they play each other. 2 of those will only have one loss. If LSU upsets Alabama, then you've got 3 losses there in the SEC. 3 one-loss teams. Yeah. So yeah, I think any Pac-12, the ACC, the Big 10, Big 12, any of these conferences, if they want somebody there, they got to have a one-loss champion. Golden Bears, California can upset Cougars here easily. Cougars are favored by 10 at home. I am taking Washington State to win, but it's one of those games to look at. I got Washington State covering at 10. I'm taking over on the 15.5. Next, we have the Washington Huskies 6-3 hosting the Stanford Cardinals 5-3. Huskies are favored by 10 at home. I got the Cardinals covering the 10, under on the 46.5. Next, we have the USC Trojans at 4-4 going into the Oregon State Beavers 2-6. The Trojans are favored by 16.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 61. Texas A&M Aggies 5-3 going into Auburn, also 5-3. The Tigers are favored by 3.5 at home. I have them winning, covering, and over on the 49. Another huge, probably the second biggest game of the week. 7-1 Georgia Bulldogs versus the 7-1 Kentucky Wildcats. You would think we have 2 7-1 SEC teams here. Georgia's favored by 9 on the road. Now let's look at the season. There's been 4 teams that both these teams have played and won. They both have played Missouri. Georgia beat Missouri 43-29. Kentucky beat them 15-14. South Carolina, Georgia won 41-17. Kentucky won 24-10. They both beat Vanderbilt. The Bulldogs 41-13. The Wildcats 14-7. Florida, Bulldogs 36-17 winners. Wildcats 27-16 winners. Except for the Missouri game, for the most part, what the Bulldogs have given up on defense, so have the Wildcats. 29-14, that was the only exception. 17-10, 13-7, 17-16. We know these two defenses can play. On the season, the Bulldogs have averaged giving up 16-3. The Wildcats have averaged 13. But the Bulldogs' offense is scoring 13 points a game more than the Wildcats. Yes, you got to stop your opponent, but you got to outscore them when you stop them. I am picking the Bulldogs to win this. I am going to have them cover the 9. I'm taking over on the 43.5. The biggest game of the week, as we all know, you have to be live under a rock or on Mars not to know about this game if you're an NCAA college football fan. Alabama Crimson Tide going into Death Valley on a Saturday night. The Roll Tide is 8-0, 5-0 in conference, 54 points a game, Tui, and that offensive scoring. LSU is 7-1, 4-1 in conference. They're scoring on the season 30 points a game, average. Defense, 15.8 for the Tide, 15-1 for the Tigers. Last week, I said I had LSU the whole time. I'm like, there's no way LSU didn't win this. It's Death Valley. It's a night. It's on a Saturday night. That place is going to be rocking. This is when Saban loses. This is the game. But you know what? Since Nick Saban has become the Alabama head coach, he is 9-3 versus LSU. He is 4-1 in Death Valley. As much as I want to take LSU to win, as badly as I want to call the upset if it happens, I'm taking the Tide. I don't think LSU's defense can stop the offense of Alabama. I just don't see it. Alabama wins. I do have LSU covering the 14.5, taking over on the 54. The over-under this game is 54. That's what Alabama's scoring themselves. So technically, Alabama can win this game 54-0. And they would cover the spread, cover the over-under, and win the game. Not that it's going to be 54-0, but I'm just saying. I'm saving 4-1 in Death Valley. He knows how to win there. He used to coach there. Hello! He knows what that place is like. He'll have his team ready. Bama all the way. Next, we have the 6-2 Troy Trojans versus the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, 4-4. Troy's favored by 10.5. I got them winning. I got Louisiana covering and under on the 64. Next, we have the South Alabama Jags, 2-6 versus the Arkansas State Red Wolves, 4-4. Red Wolves favored by 16. Jags cover over on the 63.5. Appalachian State Mountaineers, 5-2. Coastal Carolina Deer, whatever the hell they're called, 5-3. Appalachian State, 14.5 favorites. I got Coastal Carolina covering and over on the 57.5. And last but not least, the Georgia Southern Eagles, 7-1 versus the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks, 4-4. Georgia Southern's favored by 7.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 57.5. That's going to wrap up NCAA week number 10, perfect 10. So we'll see where my picks go. Those big games we got to keep an eye on. Georgia, Alabama. What if LSU wins? What if Georgia wins? Florida. You have 4 one-loss SEC teams. Going to be crazy. Alright, that wraps up week 10. Happy Halloween to everyone. As always, thanks for watching Robert Sports Show. Don't just have a great day. Have a spiffy day. Robert Sports Show, your YouTube leader. Sports Town content.